Hello, and welcome back to our topic, User Story Basics. In this part here, we're going to look at the so-called three C's of user stories. In the previous part of our topic, where we introduced user stories and explained why you would want to use them, you're probably thinking that, okay, that's fun, that's nice, but that's not exactly something I'm going to be able to write software from. So here we want to really understand are you able to use a user story to write software? And that's, I think, really partly can be explained with the so-called three C's. Now, the three C's stand for card, conversation, confirmation. The first time, Ron Jeffries is credited with coming up with the three C's in a blog that he wrote back in 2001. And at that time, he was referring to the use of user stories in a methodology called extreme programming. And extreme programming is where basically user stories were initially conceived of, and then user stories were adopted by other methodologies, such as Scrum, for example. The first of the C's is the card. In extreme programming, the requirements, if you like, were gathered from what was called a customer representative. The customer representative was typically co-located with the team. You can kind of think of like the product owner in Scrum. And each week, XP used a very short time box, 1 week. Each week, the customer representative would sit down with the team and explain to them something that was valuable. That's where the user stories came from. And the team would write it down on either an index card or a post-it note. And part of writing it was to make it real, to take it from just being some kind of crazy idea to actually, when you write something down, it takes on a clarity of its own. But most importantly, by restricting the size of the card or the post-it note, usually about 3 by 5 inches, it physically constrained the real estate on which you could write the user story. The intent being that we should be able as a team to deliver the user story in one sprint. And you got to remember, XP used a very short sprint or iteration, 1 week. So the card is meant to capture the idea that we do write user stories down to make them real. And we also keep them very small such that we can deliver our system in these small slices by physically constraining on a small card how much we could write down. It's really going to keep that strip that we want to deliver through the system very, very focused. So that was the intent of the card. Small vertical slices of functionalities, being able to deliver something that was valuable to our stakeholder or customer representative. The second C is personally what I think is the most important. It's the conversation. We have fallen into a funny little trap with traditional requirements where we've really developed a pattern of stakeholders and business analysts writing the requirements and then effectively throwing them over a wall or shipping them off to the dev team. And unfortunately, what can frequently happen, no matter how detailed the requirements are, there's going to be misinterpretation. So one of the most powerful attributes of a user story is the conversation. If you ask true Agilists about what user stories, if you ask them if it's a requirement, they will tell you no. They will tell you it's actually a promise for a conversation to understand what the requirements are. And so, for example, here we take our user story, which is expressing a need. Here we have Lawrence, our product owner, talking to the team saying, look, as a hungry person, I want a toaster so that I can eat fresh, yummy toast. He now is able to have a conversation with the team. The team can start asking him questions. Well, what do you need out of this toaster? Or what should it look like? And of course, first of all, Dragon is saying, well, I heard that you really want the toaster to be very nice, so why don't we make it out of 24 karat gold plate? Because that would certainly be really nice. And of course, Lawrence says, what? That's going to be stupidly expensive. We can't afford that. That's not in the budget. And now Paul, he goes, well, we can make it out of cheap plastic. That'll really knock our costs back, and we can develop that really, really quickly. And here Lawrence is able to explain to them, no, we don't want that, because we want to create a product that our stakeholders can be proud of, that they're really going to enjoy. So I think what we really want to do is build a stainless steel toaster. And everyone on the team goes, oh, okay, now we truly see what you want. Okay, it's going to be a stainless steel toaster. Now, this little example here may seem pithy and cute, but you really have to understand, think of how many systems have been either grossly overbuilt, gold-plated, or effectively very cheaply built because there was a lack of alignment between the business and the IT team or the dev team, because we didn't have this conversation. One of the great challenges in software development is everyone has their own perspective of a requirement. And again, no matter how detailed we make that requirement, people are ingenious at coming up with their own interpretation of that requirement. Through the conversation that is inspired here, the fact that the product owner or the customer representative or the stakeholder is directly talking to the team and explaining what's really needed, we can achieve alignment and understanding of what the true need is. So that's the conversation. And again, I believe this is one of the most important and valuable aspects of the user story, that it facilitates these conversations. Finally, there's the third C, the confirmation. Now, we've just had these conversations, we're getting really great ideas, so at this point we want to be able to write those down. Frequently, this confirmation is referred to as the acceptance criteria. This is how we elaborate the user story with testable criteria that we're able to confirm that, yes, we have implemented this story correctly. So as the team is talking to Lawrence, here we're showing our business analyst, Carlos, having a conversation with Lawrence. We're getting these detailed, testable criteria that help us say, okay, what is it that we need to be able to show Lawrence to demonstrate that we have successfully met his criteria for the toaster. And just a little background here on acceptance criteria, going back to the original source of user stories, extreme programming. Remember we talked about those cards? Very interesting thing about these acceptance criteria. When the tests were written from these acceptance criteria, remember the acceptance criteria here, the confirmation, are these executable tests that can demonstrate, yes, we've met the criteria that the customer representative or the product owner has given us. Well, in XP, at the end of their sprint, they would take the cards and tear them up, because in their view, the acceptance criteria formed the basis of their requirements. Made sense, right? These were the automated tests that could demonstrate that the system was complete. So really, the acceptance criteria, think of them as the bullet lists of tests that you can execute to be able to demonstrate to Lawrence here. See, your criteria that you gave us for the toaster, for example, it has to have a stainless steel finish. Well, we can show you that. So this lets us know when we're done and able to show it to the product owner or customer representative. So those are the so-called 3 C's of user stories. And that's how we can take the user story and use it to work with the team to be able to understand what software or what the team actually has to be able to deliver to that product owner.